Good morning, everybody. We'll bring the regular meeting of the Tahoe Truckee Sanitation Agency, December 15th, 2021, to order. Rochelle, will you do roll call?
Director Lewis?
Here.
Director Smelser?
Here.
Director Cox?
Yes.
And Vice President Tresson?
Yes, here. At this point, we'll stand and face the flag, and on the count of three, do the Pledge of Allegiance. 1, 2, 3. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Okay, at this point, we'll open the meeting for public comment. Anybody from the public wishing to address the board on any item that's not already on the agenda is free to do so.
We have not received any public comment.
No written comments. Oh,
You said public comment?
there's timing for you. Hello, Pippin.
Just in time.
Pippin, were you going to address the board under public comment?
I would love to.
Okay.
Thank you. Maybe we'll miss.
Yes.
Yes, please.
State your name for the record, please.
Great. My name is Pippin Mader. I wanted to thank the board for the opportunity to speak this morning. So I have a few, three things I'd like to talk about. First off, just a quick thing, I feel like as a member of public coming in here, right, we're all having to mask up because of the governor's orders. But I'd love to have some kind of more clarity on what exactly is that. I know some TTSA employees are saying they're not vaccinated. Makes me a little uncomfortable coming in here. I'm like vaccinated and boosted, so it's not that big a deal. But on the other hand, I've got people that I relate to in my world that aren't. So I wanted to make sure that kind of bring that up. The other was a quick question about the master plan. I keep on hearing about it. It's been a couple of years now. Lane brought it up at the North Tahoe meeting, that it's delayed again. My understanding was it was going to be this month, and then it didn't happen. It was going to be October, and that didn't happen. It was going to be April, and didn't happen. So I'm kind of wondering what's going on with that. We'd love to see a draft of that. I think that there's a lot of interest in what's going on with that. Lane brought up the TRI. That, of course, brings up some, starts to be that's a concern. So I'd love to hear about that. And then finally, so I, of course, have been to a few meetings. I've been working on a house project at home. But now the weather's turned. I did have a question about it was a comment I brought up I think it was in July, and related to a violation resulting from low chlorine. And that happened. It was sort of this confluence of issues that happened where they were doing maintenance and then chlorine wasn't being injected for more than 15 minutes, and then the result was there was no chlorine. Of course, there was a high coliform. I must keep notes about this. And there was some discussion back and forth about that. And at the end, Dan did ask that that be kind of brought up, that some kind of report be brought to the board that talked about what other times there might have been maintenance where there did happen to be a grab sample pulled during that maintenance. What other times there could have been violations that sort of didn't occur, and not saying that they were violations, but just kind of understanding how the maintenance process worked and whether there would be violations there. So I did want to kind of hear about that and where that ended up. Like I said, Dan did ask for that, and I never then saw a report on that. So maybe Michael gave one that I missed, but it's not. With that, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Pippin. LaRue, regarding the last comment about the chlorine violation in the report, I'm not recalling whether there was a follow-up. We've discussed the chlorine issue multiple times, and Mike, I think you've given discussions during your operations report. I don't know if there was a formal report requested by.
I don't recall one. What we can do, since this is an item just for public comment, we can touch base on it in the department report, just to revisit what the issue was. But to answer the direct point, I don't remember a direct request. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. I just don't recall it.
All right.
No other public comment.
Nobody coming around the door. We will go ahead and close public comment at this time and move on to item 3, professional achievements, awards, and anniversaries.
Good morning, Vice President Tresson and board members. Vicki Lufrano, Human Resources Administrator. And I just wanted to acknowledge a couple of employees for their achievements. The first one being Justin Parrish from the Maintenance Department. He's a Mechanic 3 with 5 years of continuous service with TTSA. And I just wanted to note for Justin, who chose not to attend today, just to let you guys know that Justin has actually been here for approximately 14 years with TTSA, but he left at some point, and so our acknowledgement today is 5 years of continuous service. So congratulations to Justin. And then second, I wanted to acknowledge a new hire from the Operations Department. Our new operator in training is Dan Underwood, who's here with us today, and I believe Dan might want to say a few things, Dan?
Yeah.
Okay, and congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
Dan?
Hello, gentlemen. I want to introduce myself. My name's Dan Underwood.
Thank you.
I got hired on as an OIT. I am new to the industry, and I'm very happy to be here. And I look forward to the future, and I want to grow with this agency. And I'm going to give this agency everything I have. So, again, thank you. You guys hired the right person for the job.
Thanks, Dan.
Welcome aboard, man. Welcome aboard.
And congratulations also to Justin, letting him know the board appreciates his 5 and actually full 14 years of service he's provided to the agency. Is that it for that item?
That is, thank you.
Anything else from the board on that? Very well. We'll move on to item 4, the consent agenda. At this point,
I'll make the motion for the consent agenda, having the finance committee having already reviewed the warrants and the financial statements as of last Monday.
All in order?
Absolutely.
I'll second your motion, Wayne.
so we have a motion by Lewis and a second by Cox to approve the consent items. Any further discussion? Dave?
No,
Anything
good.
that you see on the payment of bills, questions about? This would be the time to ask it.
It's just,
Oh, well, I did have one.
okay, go ahead.
On the page 7, logically, is that a one-time charge we're looking at?
That's for the procurement of the equipment. So that's the one-time charge for the equipment. As more stuff comes in, you'll have additional
Perfect.
charges.
Great.
I'd like to acknowledge that, at the finance committee meeting last Monday, it was a very informative meeting that Blake and I attended, and the discourse between staff and the committee was excellent, well done, well prepared, and I just think it's brings some enlightenment as far as us having reviewed a lot of things prior to the board meeting, so we can report back to the directors that we've gone over those things. And I just want to say to Blake, the homework you do is outstanding as far as bringing that information, a lot of that information to the finance committee.
Thank you, Lane. So you guys keep your eyes open on the payment of bills. Obviously review that, but the finance reports, we're working with Crystal and LaRue and our staff to try and bring more information to you guys. Just a couple things to be aware of. The Fund 2 report now includes revenue. It's the connection fees are shown versus the expenditures on our it is our wastewater capital reserve fund, and we're starting to show on our overall fund balances not only where we're at now, but where we were a year before. And so it gives you kind of some idea of, changes over the past year. And so these are things just to be aware of that are modifications. And Lane and I continue to, as we dig through this stuff, work with staff to try and make these as functional as possible for us to be able to effectively review the finances of the agency. And so far, I think we're, as Lane said, making some good headway on this. So
The trend lines are very important.
if there's no further discussion, Crystal, I don't know that you have anything to say on this one. We'll go ahead and I guess we don't need to do a roll call on this. So we've had a motion and a second. So all in favor of approving the consent agenda item? Aye. Aye. And we'll now move on to the regular agenda, item 5.1, a report from the November 17th, 2021 closed session meeting.
At the November 17, 2021 closed board meeting, at the end of closed session, there was no report provided. So I'm just going to report that no action was taken during that closed session.
Okay. And there's no board action required.
No board action required. Correct.
Thank you, LaRue. And item 5.2, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of November 17th.
I'll make the motion that we approve the board minutes of November 17th.
I'll second that motion.
Right? Dave, any comments?
No, I'm good.
I had one comment, Vicki, if you could add a statement under professional achievements and awards. It says Ms. Vicki Lufrano acknowledged several members of the ABC staff who obtained professional achievements awards and anniversaries. I'd just like for the record for it to say, and I'm pretty sure this is what happened, the board congratulated staff on their accomplishments. Yeah. If that's okay with the board with that amendment?
As amended.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. Move on to item 5.3, approval of updated maintenance department manager, maintenance supervisor, E&I supervisor, E&I technician, lab director, and chemist classification descriptions. Vicki?
Yes. Good morning again, Vice President Tresson and board members. As a continuous effort to maintain the accuracy of the classification descriptions, there are proposed amendments to the job descriptions as Vice President Tresson just pointed out. As you're aware from last month's meeting, several of TTSA's job descriptions include requirements for certain California Water Environmental Association or CWEA certifications. While these certifications in most instances are not required to work within the wastewater industry, TTSA has opted to require them as a measure of aptitude. CWEA has made recent amendments to some of their testing requirements as well as the actual testing schedule. And as a result, we are amending job descriptions that contain the CWEA certification requirements so that we can maintain consistency among all job descriptions. Bless you. Management and staff recommend the approval of the updated maintenance department manager, maintenance supervisor, E&I supervisor, E&I technician, laboratory director, and chemist classification descriptions. Any questions?
Any questions from the board? They looked like they were pretty straightforward. I had one question. The statement that, and I'll go to just the first one on the maintenance department manager, the possession of the grade 4 certification within 4 qualifying test cycles upon meeting testing eligibility requirements. So I'm just curious, how you monitor the eligibility. If you're to hire someone for this position or another position from outside the industry, and I know that we're looking at that because it's challenging these days in the current market, how does the district or how does the employee, how do you determine when that eligibility requirements begins? Who tracks that?
Take it.
Sure. At least initially, I will answer that. Generally speaking, upon the new hire coming into the agency, we will let them know a general time frame for which we assume or require that they will receive their certification. And then secondarily, that would fall upon, of course, the employee, but the supervisor of the employee to make sure that that happens with their subordinate employee. Do you have additional information to
Yeah,
add?
so typically you would fill out the application, CWA, provide your education or whatever additional information that we use to figure out what's applicable to the grade. They will make an assessment of it, provide you with what your grade level is, and then from that point, that'll be the baseline for us to start monitoring when they would be able to be eligible. So that would be the responsibility, like the supervisor or the individual themselves.
Rude, do you envision that, if you, particularly for some of maybe the higher level, the 3-level positions, if you're recruiting externally for those and you find people outside of the industry, that could take a while till they hit those eligibility requirements?
Unfortunately, that's true. It will take a while.
Okay.
CWA was more favorable previously. We did the change to mechanics last month. They used to apply more of your time served in a different profession, almost 1-for-1, or at least 2-for-1 for your time as a time served. But they've changed that where they've capped it out. So I think the example we used last month was someone with 20 years of experience would only get a maximum of 2 years of eligibility. So that's where the problem is coming in. So yeah, if you're hiring someone that's was in the refinery business that's had to deal with pumps and all the mechanical phases there, or maybe another sanitary agency that doesn't require the certifications, it could be up to 3-4 years before they're even eligible.
Okay. And historically, with the old job description, from the date of hire, they had 18 months or something like that to pass it, and that's just not possible, even though you feel they got the qualifications. This now, they can keep that job, but once they get those qualifications to take the test, they have to then get it within that 1-year period or 4 testing cycles.
So we changed to the quarterly. They changed it from 6 months testing, which gave the previous job description 1.5 years for them to pass. Now we can only 3 opportunities to take the test. Now they're providing it on a quarterly basis, which is really a benefit to the staff. So now they can take that test 4 times. It gives more opportunities.
Very good. I don't know whether we should note that Director Wilkins, President Wilkins is here, and so Dan, I'll hand it off to you. We're on 5-3. 5-3. Cool.
I know that he arrived at 9:14.
Okay.
Thanks. Any further discussion on item 5-3?
I just wanted to ask Vicki, these job descriptions and job requirements, are they going to be posted in our handbook, or how are we going to be able to relate to these? Is this something that's going to be in its own file, or?
We place all of our job descriptions on our website, and they are accessible to anybody.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Moved by Director Lewis,
Second?
seconded by Director Cox. Did we take public comment on this item yet? Is there any public comment? All right, seeing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed? Great.
Motion approved.
Thanks, Vicki. Item 5-4, approval to solicit bids for the 2022 roof repair project. EJ?
Yep. Good morning, directors. So before you today is the roof repair project 2022. This project builds on the recent projects the last couple iterations. Repairing roofs that have either reached the end of their useful life or are nearing the end of their useful life. The focus of this phase is on building 2 AWT roofs. That's over the control room in AWT. Building 3 maintenance middle roof. So that's a part of the roof that we had not touched yet in the prior iteration. Building 4 active buildings, and then 2 spots in the corridor, 6A and 6C. The constructed work would be done by a general contractor between June 13 and September 9. We had budgeted $750,000 for the project. Our revised estimate is $575,000. And the contract documents are attached. And our recommendation is to approve the solicit bids for this project.
Thanks, Jay. Any questions from the board? Wade?
Yeah, Jay, on this bid, was there any, because I'm sure you based it on the previous work that was done. Is there any less, did you take anything out of it? Because it's almost 30% or 28% less than what your engineer estimate was. I mean, is it just a better bidding climate?
Well, yeah, so what we do is we project years ahead of time in terms of what we might spend. You know, we knew this project was coming up. What we don't know at the time when we're putting it on the schedule is how our roof condition is going to be at that time. So we were projecting that in these areas, the roof might have ended up in worse. Other areas might have been worse than what they were, and we would have to add those to the project. As it was, we were able to tailor back and not expand our scope to re-roof areas that are actually holding up pretty well. So we just do our short answer, we do our best guess as to what the magnitude might be, but then it's not until we go up and do our detailed inspection and preparation for the project that we can then dial in what our work's going to be for the
Okay,
project.
on your inspection, what further, when you're taking a look at these areas that you're looking at, you have it diagrammed in what areas you want to look at. What other areas do we still need to look at to accomplish the complete roofing project for TTSA?
So to answer your question, the complete roofing project for TTSA will be indefinite. We have a large amount of EPDM roofing that's coming due at different times. So we're going to need to, every few years, 3 to 5 years, say, have another roof project where we go in and tackle a different area of the roof. It's hard to throw a number at it. I would guess perhaps we've done 20 to 25% of the roof coverage, around the plant.
I just want to get into the same situation where there's any detrimental effect to our equipment underneath as we did in the first one.
Correct.
Because we let something go, I think, a little bit too long to where it affected our operations.
Yeah. So we have, if you want to call it triage.
Okay, right.
We've triaged through these projects the most, the areas that have the most sensitivity to them.
Okay.
So after this job, we've hit all
the triage.
We've hit all the really important ones, right? And these other ones, if they leak, yeah, we'll have to deal with it, but it's not to the level, like on the first job, we hit the really kind of the red alert ones, and then, step down from there.
Right. It concerned me on the first one when our equipment underneath was being impacted by the condition above.
Yeah.
We never want to let ourselves get to that point.
Correct.
If we did, then maybe we've got to retake a look at expanding the project.
Yeah, and so the program's always going to be there.
Okay, right.
It's just the projects will evolve and change. We can't predict 20 years from now, is it going to be facility X or Y that comes up first. But the program to replace and repair roofing is more of an overall program.
Let's just not get back to the tree.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jay, are we replacing the original roofs from 1970s? Okay, so this isn't a second roofing project. This is the original roof that we're.
Almost
some
50
of
years
them,
old.
some are 70s, some are 80s.
Okay.
Like the original plan was 75. 81 was the big
Expansion.
But yeah, off the top of my head, all the ones that I know that we've touched were either 75 or 81.
So, a question. This is plugged into a planned maintenance system so that it isn't just random. So at a certain date, you go up and look at it again.
Yeah, one of our comments to our master plan consultants was that, hey, we need to have this. We have a lot of roofing out here. It all has different lives to it, and all has finite age to it. So we'd be remiss if we did not allocate money for an overall roof program.
Sorry about that.
Yep. no worries.
So we got a bunch of 40 to 45-year-old roofs that probably have a 30-year design life.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, the fact that we've gone as long as we have been good.
And we've had to have patches through the years, right, Jay? So
Yeah, so, the small minor patches that our maintenance crews have taken care of through the years, and that only goes so far with Band-Aids before you have too many Band-Aids and you just got it replaced with completely new.
Hey Jay, I was looking at the list of buildings in the staff report, and then there's a building for acid, the acid building, but I didn't see it in the site plan, nor did I see a detail sheet. Each other building has got its own sheet page where it kind of shows the details of that building's roofing.
So there's a drawing there that shows fans and ductwork. That's over the acid part of the building. Technically, it's part of SHS. So building 4 is the solids handling system complex.
Okay.
And the acid building is a room associated with that building that supports the solids handling process. So that's maybe like if you're looking on project maps or site maps, you'll find it under SHS, and it's just a subset of that building.
Okay. And then I saw that, I guess in those photos, you talked about contractor to remove and dispose of blowers. Are we not replacing them, or?
Yeah, process-wise, we have no need for that. Michael, you want to touch on the blowers for the acid building?
Yeah, through the original design, that building had a scrubber system and fans that were associated with using a 30% HCl, hydrochloric acid concentration that we used to bring in, and we would then dilute that down to the 8 to 10% solution and use that throughout the plant. And since about 1994, we've gone to a 5% solution. So because we're not diluting the high concentration anymore, we don't need to have that scrubber system in the room. So the fans that were associated with it can be taken away. And we never plan on going back to the 30% hydrochloric solution.
Those blowers haven't been used since the 90s?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Any public comment? Please step to the podium.
Great. My name is Pippin Mayer. I'm commenting about the roof project. So, Jay, I'm sort of curious about, it looks like you're specking out EPDM as the roofing, and a lot of, I was talking to the city inspector about what they're doing on flat roofs, and that they're universally transitioning to welded vinyl as a commercial, they're using it residential. You probably know about this too, but that they're not leaking on these flat roofs. Everything else is, and the vinyl is generally considered to be a tougher, the same thing they use for pool liners, is generally considered to be a tougher and better for snow climates, longer lasting material. So I guess I was just kind of wondering what the pros and cons were of that, and why the transition, or why sticking with the older roofing system.
Okay, thanks for your comment, Pippin. Would any of the directors like any feedback from staff on that?
Well, yeah, I'm curious. Do we consider that different roofing products?
We work closely with roofers, and they come up and know our site quite well and have alternative recommendations. This is what the overall consensus was of what we were going to go with.
Yeah.
and the failures they're due to the age of the unit, of the material. It's 50 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think the pressure should be, once it's in, we expect that EPDM is a faulty material that's going to fail the next couple of years. The reason we're having these issues is because of the age.
Okay. Okay. Any other public comment? Seeing none. Any other questions or comments from the board?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Anyone would like to make a motion?
Oh, so moved.
Moved by Dave, seconded by Blake.
Yep.
Those in favor, signify by
Aye.
saying
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Not opposed? Great. Motion passes unanimously. Item 5, approval to solicit bids for the 2022 control room upgrade project. Okay?
Sure. So before you today is the 2022 control room upgrade project. So this involves remodeling our control room and the associated satellite labs associated with AWT and PNCT. The work includes new flooring, baseboards, paint, backer boards, cabinetry, countertops, sinks, toilets, and other minor work. You could think of it similar to what we did here in this main building, but then a few extra things because they are control rooms and labs. The construction work contemplated would be done by a general contractor, slated between timeframe of September 19 and November 4. And the engineer's estimate is $149,270, which is approximately equivalent to what our budget was of $150,000. Attached in your packet are the drawings, and management and staff recommend approval to solicit bids for this project.
Thanks, Jay. Questions or comments from the board?
Jay, is this,
Badly needed. Badly needed.
I'm not aware that I haven't been down to these rooms. There's no why. Is this because the existing rooms are in a state of disrepair, or is this because they're fine but they're just not serving the function of the agency and you need to remodel them to, create office space or workspaces? What is the driving force?
It's a combination of a couple factors. One is it's aging. There's been deterioration of these spaces over time because they're original. They're 45 years old, approaching 50. And second, it's just beautification around the plant. These are areas that our staff are in frequently all day long, and we just think it'd be a good morale booster, and then good for support the environment for our staff.
Not only that, Jay, but when we have tours from people from all over the world and countries to come in and see our plant, that control room was a little bit not up to our standards, and I'm glad to see that you got it on the agenda to get the flooring and the base taken care of, because it definitely showed its age.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
thank you. That was a good project.
Yep.
So in that bid, I mean, the upgraded lighting in there, is that part of the project?
No lighting. There's unfortunately with fixed budgets, we had to prioritize in terms of what we could spend our money on and what we should spend our money on. The lighting, the ceiling, the control cabinets, those kind of things are not included in the project.
Okay, but you feel that that's adequate at this point if we're doing the other
Yeah, I mean,
work on it? I mean, I'm looking at that control room too, and I'm seeing that a little brightness would be brighten things up, put it that way. I mean, would we change to different bulbs or whatever in there to make it a more warmer spot?
The challenge, I hear you. The challenge is that we have a lot of competing uses for our monies.
Right.
So we got to, we're trying to strike the balance, in terms of how much can we make, a good splash here without breaking the bank, so that we are starving on other projects that are more, process or critical related, and that might come up in a master plan. They're just kind of balancing funds and needs.
While you're in on a project, it's always best to do something right the first time all the way through. But
So we also balance it out with what staff can do currently as well.
Right.
So there's an opportunity for us to do it, we can perform it more cheaper than if we were to contract it out. And if we find that during the process, there is a contingency with it that there is an addition that needs to be done, such as changing that, then we can go with it.
Yeah, the other thing with, lighting in particular, there's been a lot of advances in terms of energy efficiency.
Right, exactly.
That creates opportunities for operational savings. And I know doing lighting retrofits, it's a bit of a headache at the time you're implementing it, but over the long run, it reduces carbon footprint and electric bill costs as well.
Right.
So at the board's pleasure, I mean, we could certainly, postpone, the solicitation of bids and increase the scope of our project. I guess the concern I have would be with respect to, master plan and, when we see those numbers.
Question I have, Jay, lighting, typically it's in the ceiling, the rest of this work is not necessarily in the ceiling. I would suspect that a lighting project could be, you could do the control room project that's in our bid package, and then add a lighting project later without it being, without having to repeat a bunch of work that you just got done.
Yeah, I think that's accurate, because the work is going to be below the plane of the false ceiling.
Right.
And you
It's
can
all-
come back afterwards and do a retrofit.
Right. It's the same drop ceiling like we have in here in the
Yeah.
control room.
Yes,
So a lighting project could be done independent of.
it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, take a look at it, see what it is.
So I don't think we want to hold this project up, but.
No, I just, I'm looking at it when you're doing a project like that. I mean, you're right on the ceiling, but it's a very environmental. Plus, it could be cost saving too, as far as electrical output long term.
That actually kind of leads me to another question, not related to this project, but have we had, there's, you can hire basically energy efficiency auditors to come through your facilities and, come back with recommendations on a suite of improvements that you can make that identify, payback cycles and all that. Have we ever done that?
Yes.
How long ago was
Yes,
it?
probably 3 years ago, Jay.
Well, the one that's more recent, maybe Richard has more information on, but I know that back, it was before I was here, and around Y2K-ish, there was a plant-wide energy efficiency
Yeah.
audit, and there were a number of equipment replacements that happened, higher efficiency motors. I think lighting was part of that, equipment, et cetera. So there was a big push back then, and then I think in the last several, I think there's been some more with respect to like lighting and maybe some other things. Do you have any on that?
Yeah, the most recent one was for lighting. We did work with a company to come in and gave did a lighting survey, and we've been implementing those as in-house projects as time permits. You'll see if you look down the corridors, all those lights have been changed to LED. Many of the exterior lights have been changed to LED. The shop lights have all been changed over to LED. So we are, as we go into an area to do a repair, we'll upgrade it to LED, or if we have time, we'll do a small project and do an area. And we can certainly do that with the control rooms as well. We can probably easily handle retrofitting those to LED fixture. I probably want to do it prior to the project, so work in and out and let them do their thing. But we could certainly do that.
So we're doing LED retrofit, because really it's going to LED, and then there's the control upgrades that make sure the lights are only on when they need to be, right, at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
and that's a little bit of a challenge for us, because that was one thing I think we got originally addressed in the original one, and they went and put in a lot of motion sensors, but in our environment, some areas those are not the best solution just for safety reasons. So at least switching over to LED, even though we're burning them 24/7, we get that cost savings over fluorescent or a high pressure sodium.
Right. Okay. Other questions or comments from the board on this project?
None, I think it's a spot-on project. Jay, thank you for bringing it on board, and I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Okay,
I'll second.
moved by Dale, seconded by Dave. Is there any public comment on this item? No public comment? Okay. Without opposed public comment, and those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed? Great, thank you. Next item is discussion of in-person board of directors meeting. This would be for our January meeting?
It would be, yes.
Okay.
I got a question here. When our recordings are taking place, you have to upload the board meeting onto the site, so it's, we have a time frame difference. I mean, probably later today it would be up on there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Or how long does it
A
take?
little bit longer.
Is it difficult to do a live situation? Because most of the people know we always meet the third Wednesday of every month now, and if they don't, they know that they can tune in at 9 o'clock on the third Wednesday of the month. It's just a little bit more transparency to what the public becomes accustomed to that time, as opposed to when we upload it later on. Can we look into doing a live? Tell me what the problem would be.
Well, first of all, there's no issue with transparency. We're doing exactly what we're supposed to do. We're filming it. These meetings were not filmed before. They're on their internet. They're posted to our website, usually the day of, the day after.
Okay.
There's notices for the public to show up. So I don't think we're compromising transparency whatsoever. What you're referring to, I think, is having a hybrid session, which is when you can either watch it through Zoom and in conjunction be in person.
Right.
And that is something some agencies have done. It's a capital investment we'd have to do, and it's not as simple as putting a laptop here and having you guys watch it, because there's feedback issues. So, and we would have that when we were doing video conferencing, when Rochelle and I would try to sit in the room with Zoom. She'd have to go to her office because we're getting feedback. So we can accommodate that. I don't think it's as simple as just calling someone or hitting a switch and off we go. I think there's going to be installation of some equipment, figure out how to maneuver the room, isolate sounds and what have you. Yeah. So it can be done. I just don't know if that's something that the agency wants to take on at this point. I think that what we're doing right now is satisfactory and sufficient.
I'm just looking at the technology upgrade. I was thinking, some of the other agencies do that, like looking into it, see how much it would be. It's just a convenience factor. The public can tune in at the time of the board meeting, so they can watch the board meeting. They don't have to interact at that point, but they can certainly know that third Wednesday every month at 9 o'clock we'll meet and they can get the best. But that's just my thought.
Also, just even if we wanted to do that, right now we're having a problem with just finishing some other projects we started just due through working with the contractor, because they're having shortages with staffing and supplies. So even if we were to initiate that, it may take months just to complete that. Our camera project alone right now has been delayed numerous months, and it's simply because of procurement and staffing on the contractor's part. But if that's something the board would like to discuss, I can.
I'd like to ask a question. About a year ago, we were doing Zoom meetings where we sat back and looked at the screen, and we had all of the directors, we had any of the public that came to the podium, we had all of the staff. That was a very effective way, I feel, to conduct under the COVID restrictions and everything that we were facing at the time. Now, from what I understand, that we're now with this Omicron variant, that all the regulations and everything are being reinstituted. And is it a hassle for staff to do Zoom meetings where we can sit back and see all the staff and all the directors on a screen?
Yeah, we can do that. With the implementation of AB 361, we have to take appropriate approval steps to deem certain conditions like a state of emergency, and then we feel that it's detrimental for public health. to have people show up to meetings. So that mechanism is there.
And
we can
and that's
implement
what
it.
this agenda item is.
I'm sorry?
That's what this agenda
And that's
item
exactly
is.
what this is, how we want it to proceed,
Yeah.
proceed next month for the January meeting. So
Now,
if
you know,
you-
having the audio part of it works very well, but for me, I like to see the rest of the directors. I like to be able to read body language and be able to sit back and be more engaged in the meeting. And audio gives you a full context of what's going on, but you don't get a visual on the staff and the rest of the board.
you're referring to.
I personally would prefer Zoom meetings the way we did for a couple of months last year when it was when the COVID restrictions were very high, and I think it's a good and a safe way to go.
So your suggestion is for the January meeting that we do it on Zoom?
Yeah, I would suggest that would be appropriate. Like I say, I have no problems with the calling in and having the audio part of it, but I like to see the directors. I like to, to be able to see everybody without their masks in a mask-free environment. And when you're sitting here in a boardroom and everybody's got their masks on, it's a little bit hard for me to hear, and I like to be totally spot on with what goes on. And I think that members of the public can also benefit from a Zoom because, once again, they have the ability to see what's going on in addition to hear what's going on.
Dave, what's your preference for
I
January?
agree. I like the Zoom idea.
Do you want to do Zoom for January?
I'm on board for that, yeah.
I think we keep it a month-to-month decision at this point, depending upon what's happening, outside. And the Zoom, the Zoom meeting is effective, and it's, for at least January anyway, we can look at it. But my question would be, you can't have a Zoom meeting and an in-person meeting. Is that correct?
Without having modifications to this room.
Correct.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we had that
That's
discussion
fine.
before,
Okay.
and it's a timely and costly venture to get on.
Now, there was times when you and I would be present in this room, we'd have the computer screen sitting in front of us. Everybody else would be either in their office or, wherever they chose to be to participate. It worked very well. I don't know what kind of a hassle it would be for staff to implement that type of a scenario again, but I think under the COVID restrictions that we're dealing with, it wouldn't hurt for us to go back to that on a month-by-month basis.
Okay, so I think I've heard Dave and Dale suggest we do Zoom, at least for January.
I'm good with it. I attended, two meetings. I've had COVID both times, the Delta and the regular, and I was able to participate in the meeting, with the Zoom. So
Right.
at this point, I would like to do it for January, and then in January decide what we're going to do in February.
All right, well, I'm hearing 3 directors that are suggesting January, so.
Well, yeah, but that's only 2 votes. We got.
Yeah, rub it in, Lane, rub it in, baby. Yeah, I know you can count to 3.
I'm going to be absent at the regularly scheduled January meeting. I'm going to be at a conference
Okay.
and won't be able to attend. So,
Let's do it.
I think in general, particularly, given the situation of a couple of the board members being out of town, I think Zoom's a great alternative. I'd rather have Dale be able to attend over Zoom than have him talking through this machine here.
Yeah, it works. It
So
worked,
that
Blake,
would
but
be my
I
preference.
just,
But for January, I'm going to, at least for the regularly scheduled meeting, I won't be here. So
Okay. Is there any public comment on this? Please step up to the podium.
Great. My name is Pippin Mayer again. I like the Zoom meetings. I understand that, honestly, the in-person meetings are more of a pain to show up to, from my perspective. and I feel like it does limit public comment a little bit, for better or worse. And right, like I get that, like you said, right, the letter of the law says one thing, the intent of the law is sort of a little bit different. I feel like these Zoom meetings are an effective, right? You can attend from anywhere, Florida, Mexico, wherever you are. But I would ask that if the month to month is a little bit tough. Like just the inconsistency, like, right? I looked online to see what was going on this month, because last month it was Zoom and this month it's in person. I'm just sort of, it's kind of like the mask mandate, right? Tell me to wear a mask and I'll wear a mask. Tell me I don't have to wear a mask and I don't want to wear a mask. Just tell me what the rules are and keep it as consistent as you can for a while. I get that maybe forever. We're all hoping to go back in person. But I really am a fan of hybrid meetings, right? North Tahoe does actually I think North Tahoe maybe is doing just Zoom, but doing a hybrid is not rocket science. I get that's a little bit complicated, but that would definitely be my preference. If you want to attend in person, great. If you want to attend remotely, great. Just kind of make it work for everybody. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. Lou.
And then I just want to clarify, the reason we would go to the Zoom meetings is because of the rise in the Omicron variant right now.
Right.
Because this really isn't for convenience, it's really more the fact that we're having a rising case. So if that is a scenario, what I can do is put that option, similar to, I think it was the last meeting, to have a
right. So we would need to make findings. We would need to make findings at the beginning of the next meeting that we're conducting the meeting via Zoom as a result of the pandemic.
Yeah. So it's good to hear that it's convenient and for public whatever, but that's not the purpose of it. The purpose is because of the gathering that. So I just wanted to clarify that. And with that, with the direction, I will put it on the board agenda for next one.
Right. And I think the logic there, from my perspective, is that at least for the January meeting, it increases the likelihood that we could actually have the meeting, because if a director or two were to be sick, as to Lane's point, you can't participate in person, but you could participate remotely if you were feeling healthy enough to. So I think that's probably the findings can be made around that, should be easy. So, all right. So I think I'm hearing consensus from the board that we'll do the January meeting via Zoom. I will probably just participate remotely, LaRue. You and I can talk about that offline.
Okay.
I know previously you were coming here and to this facility, but I've participated in a lot of the Zoom meetings where the board chair and general manager are just in separate locations, and that seems to work just as well.
Sounds good.
And it's also good during the period of time. I mean, over this next month or so period too, on those plant inspections with regards to the Carrillo report. It's important. I think you brought it up. It's important for us as directors to do the physical inspection with staff of the plants, so we all have a proper understanding of the needs and future needs at this plant. And when we do that, we don't do it in any larger group than two. And, so I think that's good.
Okay.
So I have direction. There's no action required.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Next on our agenda is management team reports, and starting with department reports. So whoever would like to start.
Good morning, President Wilkins and Board Directors. For the Operations Department report for the month of November, all plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month. The Operations Department plant performed well through the month. Cleaned and after wash the centrifuge feed tank and centrifuge tanks, associated equipment, annual plant-wide safety audit, well 31 pH in compliance for the month. Caustic was added to the effluent to maintain the 7 pH. Laboratory staff performed necessary laboratory testing. Submitted response to corrective actions requests as issued by the IAS, and are awaiting the official acceptance, which has come through at this time, which we will have Jason speak to later if you guys would like. The IAS assessment report with agency response has been sent off, and again we have gotten confirmation back. And staff continue to train the remaining operators for the weekend testing and will be completing the DOCs. Any questions for the operations report?
Jason's going to speak to that issue.
If you'd like him to, I can have
I would
Jason
like
speak
him
to
to.
the IAS report.
You okay with that?
LaRue?
If I may, prior to you arriving, Dan, there was public comment as it pertained to conversation about a previous chlorine violation, where there was a comment that there was a request a report be provided to us.
Okay.
Since we made a public comment, we didn't discuss it. I said that we would go ahead and have that discussion during this topic, during the department report. So
Okay.
after we conclude hitting the report and the lab update, I suggest we go back to that discussion
Okay.
and revisit that.
Yeah, because we both have Jason and Michael who didn't test to that. So.
Good morning, board. So yeah, we got response back from IAS. We actually attached what at the time was an interim response to IAS. They did accept all of our proposed corrective actions, and I believe the exact verbiage was that they had determined that the corrective actions were likely to prevent future occurrence. So everything went pretty smoothly as could be expected. I felt that the third-party assessor was a lot smoother, a lot easier to work with than the state has been in the past. I see the third-party assessors being a benefit to laboratories, so worked out exactly as we were hoping. I actually did submit our application for renewal for our lab certification, which expires in March. This was the last piece of that puzzle that I was waiting for. We have it. So we're good for the next 2 years on our certification, and during that next year and the year following is going to be our big push to just get the T&I compliance.
Did we, question, Jason, did we, as far as this whole procedure going through with this, anything new brought to your attention as far as the, whether it regards the SOPs or anything?
I wouldn't say new. Okay. No, nothing particularly. I mean, it's really important to understand with these laboratory assessments, there's always going to be some degree of finding. They're always going to find a few things. I felt that we actually did very well in this assessment. In retrospect, staff did a lot of work even before I was here. There was a lot of quality documents that were generated that prevented a lot of potential issues moving forward. And in the months leading up to this, we kind of initiated our own internal corrective action program. You've been seeing them show up on the packet. Those are going to show up, and it's kind of healthy and normal for a laboratory to find issues and resolve them. And there's always, they call it continual improvement. It's kind of part of the ISO standards that they built T&I off of. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be the objective of continual improvement. And as far as what they came up with, nothing earth-shattering, but very surprising.
Do you see anything with coming forward with the T&I assessment in 2 years? Will any major changes that we need to accomplish to be met?
Yeah, I mean, essentially the main takeaway from the T&I standard is documentation. So essentially having records that defend themselves is kind of the intent of T&I. And there's a lot of quality systems that we're going to have to develop between now and then. And documentation, records, all that fun stuff. And we're getting a LIMS system, which is going to solve a really large portion of the traceability stuff. Just right off the bat, it's kind of a business practice guide that'll, if you're going to run a test, it's going to say, no, you can't run this test, your standard is expired. So it really is going to be tremendously helpful for that aspect of it. But there is going to be some quality systems I'm going to have to generate. But again, we've discussed before, T&I actually provides templates for those. And I've already got the templates. I've already started working on them.
Okay. How much interaction have you had with, have you had any interaction with Carrillo and on that master plan for the lab? Okay. Have you?
As far as
with Carrillo and with that report coming about and how they look at the lab and procedures, I know we looked into that quite a bit within the last year or so. Are they, for future recommendations with regards to the lab, are they gonna, well, we haven't seen the report, so have you got any indication from Carrillo as far as them looking at the lab and seeing any changes that need to be made there?
As far as the recommendations to move-
Capital-wise and operational-wise.
So what I recall from that report was that the recommendations, of course, were to move into T&I. That we'd have to be T&I compliant within a certain amount of time. Is that what you're referring
Correct.
to?
Yeah.
And we're making we're already naturally making those moves into becoming T&I compliant by having the assessments and going with the LIMS packages. So we're already moving forward with those recommendations.
Yeah, if I may, Carrillo's not going to dictate or make recommendations how we're going to manage staff and do the processes.
Right, they've already made
Yeah.
that a while back.
Yeah, when they did a
And
work assessment.
we've adjusted the lab now in the way it's being run.
Right.
And, I just wanted to know if there's going to be any further recommendations from Carrillo with regards to that.
I don't
Apparently
recall.
not. Okay.
But the work
Okay.
that Jason's doing is outstanding with the recommendation to bring the LIMS to help us get the T&I, getting staff to perform the tasks, to prepare for all that, doing all the corrective actions. I think we're putting ourselves in a great position
Good.
to transition to T&I.
Okay.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah.
Did you have any questions on the operations?
Not for Jason, but for Mike. I was just curious, with the holiday season coming and got snow, we probably see pretty high occupancy up here and low temps, and what challenges that represents, above and beyond normal operating for making sure that the plant stays in compliance, when you're dealing with high flows and low temps.
With daily monitoring of the systems and addressing anything that is out of the norm. We don't really. It's just really watching the processes and how they're functioning and working. So many different variances can happen. We could get a warm storm that comes through. We could have a lot of so many different things could happen other than just the high occupancy. So we're constantly monitoring ahead for weather and we can put processes in and out relatively quickly to handle the higher loadings. We can bypass flow to the emergency bypass or emergency retention basin on the higher flow weekends, and then bring that back slowly to the plant to feed the plant in more of a regulated way to kind of spread the loading out across the plant. So.
See, I wasn't thinking about I&I, just occupancy and just, the organic and just.
It's pretty normal for us.
So
we're used to it. We do it every year. It's been different with COVID, of course. We've
Right.
seen some differences in flows and loadings, but we've
pretty
done
much-
it so often now, it's just kind of second nature.
Okay.
We put out weekend parameters. We make sure that we're communicating well with the operators and just looking ahead to what's coming.
So pretty much business as usual. You're
yeah.
used to big weekends and low. I know that a lot of the biological systems are, slow down when the temps get colder. And I don't know whether the water, you see a significant decrease in water temps and that sort of kinetics in the system, but.
We do, and luckily we've seen our systems and our biological systems handle those colder temperatures very well, even more so than what their original design was.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the temperatures down as low as 5 degrees Celsius, and we were told in the beginning that if you get to 4 or 5 degrees Celsius, BNR is going to basically stop working, and that was not our experience. So it still functions well, and yes, it's impacted somewhat, but again, you just control the loading to the system and you watch how it's working, and we do have that capability.
It's good. And with Dan Underwood on your team, you guys are in good shape.
Yes.
Is that
He made that clear. Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, any other questions on the operations report? And
Well, I thought he was going to respond to
The chlorine.
the chlorine issue.
So can you recap exactly what happened? I forget the time period, it's been a few months, Michael.
I believe it was back in July. So there was some maintenance being done on the chlorine. We had to purge our chlorine system so that we could do work on one of the vacuum pressure regulators out in the chlorine building. It was basically routine maintenance. Every 6 months we have to rebuild those. We have 2 of them. We have redundant systems. But in order to take the system that was in service out to work on it, we had to purge it. So there was a short period of time where there was low chlorine residual on the effluent. And our coliform is based off the daily grab. And the grab was taken at the same time that the chlorine was at a lower residual. I think it was a 0.2 milligrams per liter is what the reading was on that grab. That was reported by lab staff. Once they saw that, we had them run the sample as they would normally. And later that day, about 3 hours later, after the system was back into its normal operating, the way it normally operates throughout 99.9% of the day, we had them grab another sample. The residual, I believe, was about a 3.2, 3.5, somewhere in there, and run that sample for coliform as well. And we had the 2 results. One result was a 170, I believe, 172, something like that. And then the second sample was, I think, less than 2, or non-detect for coliform.
So, Mike, I've got a question. So it sounds like the maintenance procedure for the equipment requires it to be taken offline for a short period of time. So if we wanted to basically spend money so that when that equipment's offline, there's like a secondary piece of equipment that can effectively be kept online, so we never had a situation where we would have a low chlorine residual, what would be involved with that?
We're actually looking into a couple of different things. I mean, one, we could, every time we do any kind of maintenance, and this is, this goes outside of maintenance as well, as whenever you have to change tunners, anytime you have to evacuate that chlorine header,
right,
you're going to have, for a short period of time, a low chlorine residual.
Right.
We are looking into setting up a separate vacuum line to each header so that we can leave the in-service system. We can have a set of chlorine tunners in service and then take the other set out and then evacuate the header with the other system in service. We're looking into doing something like that. That would be a modification to the system to try to alleviate some of those periods of time where your chlorine residual can dip.
Okay. Because there's another question in my mind as to, and potentially it's a question for Lahant, but I think to some degree they've not answered it directly. But we've got these short periods of time where the chlorine residuals get low, predictably the coliform gets high, the chlorine systems come back online, coliform gets back to its normal level. Just the fact that our discharge is basically to the ground and not to the river. The question in my mind is how significant of an issue is it? Like at the Tahoe City PUD, we have water systems that we test routinely. Occasionally we'll get a high chlorine hit for one reason or another, or not high chlorine, a high coliform hit. And we'll have to send notifications out to our customers if there's a high coliform hit and follow up on it. And that's drinking water, which obviously that's not a good situation. We never like to have that happen, but occasionally there will be something will get in the system that will cause that to occur. So I know there's been a lot made of this, but there's a question in my mind as to, if we were discharging directly to the river, it'd be a different level of concern for me. But the fact that our effluent all goes into the ground and then effectively gets treated by the soil yet again, I'm just curious how much money is it worth spending to try to chase this issue or not? And I don't know what the right resource is, or what the right person is or resource is to help me answer that question.
So I think to kind of elaborate out that too, this is per plant design. the plant was designed to be able to have the chlorine system down for short periods of time. As a matter of fact, we did a study once where we shut off chlorine for over a year, and we discharged directly to the ground under a study that we did for, I don't remember, this was when I was very new here, and I don't remember exactly why they did it, but they wanted to see how that affected. We still have downstream monitoring at well 31, which is well after the injection point, so that we can see if there's anything that we're doing to the environment that would be be impactful to the environment or to public health.
Right.
Again, I think that there's just been more made out of this than, and I don't want to lessen anything, but I think there's been more made out of this than there needed to be originally. This is per design of the plant to be able to set up to shut the chlorine down for short periods of time, and then put it right back on as quick as you can.
Right.
And again, coliform is an indicating bacteria. It's not necessarily a harmful bacteria for the environment or health. So, yeah.
So when the system goes back online, seems to me that chlorine would catch up in the groundwater, or is that not?
Well,
true?
I mean, the chlorine is going to dissipate relatively quickly once it goes into the ground, but there are other natural occurring effects that happen in the ground that could help harmful bacteria. Again, we have downstream monitoring to ensure that none of those harmful bacteria to health and safety are passing through our system.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
I just want to ask some clarification. I've heard this comments made that there was allegations that the staff tried to fudge numbers, average numbers. Did that occur? Did we report our data appropriately?
We did. So we actually reported both of the samples that we took. When this happened, when the lab staff brought this to our attention, to operations attention, we consulted with Jason, and his recommendation was to do another sample, since that is a data grab sample, to do another sample that day when we were under normal operating conditions, and then we had to report both of those numbers because we ran samples on those and they were grabs. We had to report them both, and then when we talked to Lahontan after the fact, they said that before we even knew what the results were going to be, we asked Lahontan, how do we do this? And they said, you average those samples. If you would have taken 5 samples that day, then you would have taken all those samples and divided it by 5 to come out with your total for the day. There's no real set in stone. A grab sample can only be done once a day. It could be done multiple times throughout the day to get a good representation of what the plant is doing, treating the wastewater before it's put out to the ground.
Okay. Other questions or comments on this? As it relates to public comment on reports, what I was going to do is get through all the reports and then take public comment on all the reports at the end. Okay. So is there anything else on the operations department report?
Just to bring to your attention that I had mentioned that we had cleaned the centrifuge feed tank and centrate tanks. We do this about every 6 months because of debris that builds up. You can see underneath the mixer. So this is the feed tank, and this is where we put the digested sludge and the chem sludge together, and we mix it before it goes into the centrifuge where we dewater it. You can see that there's debris on the floor in the one photo. I know it's kind of hard to see in there; it's a little bit dark, but there's a sump up in front of that, and where the operator's standing. That's kind of the back end of one of the operators who's cleaning that sump out. And this is one of our lined basins. It's got that basically a plastic lining inside of it that keeps it watertight. And we use these tanks to mix our sludge and feed it to the centrifuge. It was just one of our projects that we took on last month. So
In-house?
In-house.
The confined space entry, he's at supplied air?
Yep. No, he's just on APR. We have forced air ventilation, and then we monitor the air.
Okay.
And then he's basically using a fire hose to clean out the trough in the front. And that hose the bigger hose that's coming out, it's the suction for the Vector truck. So we Vector out the
basically grit accumulation that ends up in the digesters that goes over to that feed tank. We take that grit out and we put it out of our vector pad, and then we dewater that and put it in the bins that go to Lockwood.
This is an annual.
This is biannual, actually. So we're weekly. That mixer right there, we have to hose it off to make sure that the chemical, the chem sludge that we put in there will precipitate to that mixer and will create issues if we're not keeping it cleaned off. But we can do that from above. There's a hatch at the top that we keep it cleaned with. But at least twice a year we have to go in there and clean it all up. And then we also acid wash the piping that's involved with the system to make sure we got good flows through the pipes and everything's cleaned up.
What's the life of that mixer?
That mixer has been in since 2006. We have one time actually had to replace the shaft because the mixer had too much buildup on it. It actually it's about a 25, about a 15-foot shaft.
Okay.
We had to replace it. It bent a little bit because it had buildup on it. That's why we now clean it weekly. So.
Okay.
Anything else on operations, Mike?
That's it.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, sorry. I believe is maintenance department.
Morning, President Wilkin, Board of Directors. So let's highlight the numbers from the month. The mechanical completed 21, fleet 7, E&I looks like 36. Got my glasses, I apologize. And then IT 18. So we still have 150 outstanding for mechanical. Again, we're getting caught up from staff us being down staff for a little bit of time. And then we've been focusing a lot on the plant coating project, getting those tanks back up and in service. Fleet 7, E&I 35 looks like, and IT 24. So just a few pictures of some stuff that we got going on for the month. We made the staff completed ASUIT training, so this is where everyone suits up and goes for a jaunt around the pond. So we got staff through that training. In the next photo, one project that had been outstanding was the front exit gate. That's been completed, so a new gate and new actuator have been installed and are in service. And the next photo is, as I mentioned, stripper 58 for the plant coating project. It's been trying to capture all the good weather prior to the storms to get those back in service. So that pretty much captures a pretty standard month for maintenance, nothing too out of the ordinary. One thing, if I may, I'd like to comment on the roofing, because there was a comment made about that. Just so the board knows, we do an annual inspection of the roof and then work with engineering closely to communicate what areas of concern that we find when we do those inspections. We repair any small holes or cuts that develop in the roof, and then, as I said, work with them to identify the areas that need to be part of the bigger scope project. So I think that's something we've been working on over the last 4 years since I've been here. Any questions on the monthly report?
I got a question, Richard, if I may. We had some issues at Squaw Valley at our telemetry. What went on, and did we get it fixed, or what's up?
Yeah, it's been repaired. It was repaired within about a day and a half after. The power supply went bad, and when that power supply went bad, it actually caused a small fire. We got hot enough that it melted the supply and melted some of the stuff around the supply, so we had to go in and make repairs to some wiring and put in a new battery supply and get it started back up.
And so did we lose a significant amount of data?
No, we did not lose a significant amount. I believe we lost 1 day's worth, but I do believe that we got Olympic Valley feeder back up and powered up within the same day, so there's no data loss from Olympic Valley standpoint.
Okay, so the amount of effluent that went through our siphon was all caught on the IT, not the IT, but the data board there that's at the entrance. It's right there by where our siphon goes under.
Yes.
So that's where the meltdown happened.
Correct. I do believe we lost some portion of data for one part of the day. Do you recall how much we lost?
It was about a day and a half of the data that we lost, and we reported that in the Mohawk report.
And so that this meltdown was caused from the wet or the weather or?
No, we inspected the cabinet. There seemed to be no water intrusion or anything of that nature. It looks like it's just a power supply that went bad, and when it went bad, it went bad.
Because we had a definite brownout that went on for several minutes that could have affected, the operation of that panel.
I wasn't aware of the brownout. If
Yeah,
we did have a brownout,
definitely had a brownout for probably half an hour or more before it shut down totally.
it could have definitely been a contributing factor at the least, or it could have been what caused it if there was a brownout in the area.
Any other questions on the maintenance report?
Thank you, Richard.
Richard, who monitors the actuator of the gate during the day?
We're actually still working on that aspect of it. We're working with Crystal and her staff to take on the monitoring.
Okay.
We're working on providing them a way to be able to remotely open the gate. Currently, there's only 2 locations that can be done, and neither one of those are the front desk.
Okay.
So we're working with the gate supplier to try some different options, whether it be like a garage door clicker, something that simple, or if we're going to have to actually run cable from one of the other locations there.
Yeah, I'm just looking at security of the plant. Not letting anybody in that just comes through there, and it's important, and we need to have somebody monitoring that and how you can make it work long term.
Yeah, and part of the second phase is looking at a more up-to-date access panel, if you will,
Okay.
the keypad and such, with actually a camera where we can see the individual space right in their vehicle, or if they happen to walk up, and better communication between the front gate and whoever's monitoring it. So that's a second phase that I'm working on.
Are they hitting the, when an employee comes up and the gate's closed, they're hitting, how do they make that actuator go?
Our ID badges
Okay.
have the RFID in them, and that's what will actuate the gate.
Okay. All right. Because before, 15 years ago, Dale, when we had that we all got badges and we, had to.
As of 9/11.
Yeah, as of 9/11, we did that. But, I just don't want to be laxed in the security, and if we're, having that, we're always looking at the plant to protect itself from any infiltration. So.
Any other questions on the maintenance department report? Seeing none. Next would be engineering department report.
Okay, so engineering report, the 2020 Headworks Improvement Project is nearly wrapped up. We just have some minor punch list items to take care of. And then the washer press that was misaligned, Paul just touched on that. That's due to arrive, and then they installed a new washer press. But the facility's cleaning up nicely. It's in service, performing well. So just different shots of how that looks, a little more cleaned up and presentable form from what you saw last month and when it was still kind of in construction. And projects under construction. Other than that, we got the 2021 digital scanning project. We received some of the deliverables, but they need to provide us the full complete set. That's a do-loop we do quite often with them, is making sure we get what we want. And then the chlorine scrubber improvements project, we're in contracting right now with them, with the contract on that. Projects in bid phase were the 2 projects we covered in today's meeting. Next slide, please. And then projects in development, master plan, sewer plan, we got comments back to Corolla. They're doing some final revisions. Digester improvement study, we're in the study phase, looking at where we're going, on that in terms of our new digestion boiler complex. 2022 digital scanning sewer lines project, that's in final design. Final effluent flow meter project in final design. Filter influent condition assessment, same. Plant coating project for next year, same. You'll see that next month. And then sewer manhole adjustment project in preliminary design. Any questions?
Master plan.
Yeah.
You're our head person on that. Are we going to get the 800-page report for January meeting?
So the Carollo ended up having an issue on their end with respect to IT security. They had ransomware attack. So they had that ransomware attack literally as they were doing the final touches. They don't know, we don't know what the status of them coming out of that. My understanding is this could be a short process, but it could also be a very long process. And in the meantime, they've got to make sure all their files are clean, their email. I haven't been through the ransomware attack, but I understand it's quite a process to get through it. So
Did we have any of those draft documents in our possession?
we do, and we have offered. We
That's
said,
good.
hey, if you're in a position where you need us to send this again,
Right.
they haven't yet asked for that. I think they're still trying to figure out.
They've got bigger issues than
Yeah.
just this project.
So, are we not going to have it, or are we going to have it?
Sounds like probably
Where
not.
do you want to?
I think it will be more likely to have in February, the
February.
presentation to the board of directors in February.
And the question I have is, will there be an executive summary to the 800?
Yes.
No, you got to read the whole thing. Come on now. You got plenty.
I didn't say I won't. Maybe.
Yeah, the first volume is an executive summary.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, so I would anticipate that the presentation from Carollo, giving them time to address their issues right now, addressing our comments. I'm confident we have it in February.
So we can expect Carrillo to be making that presentation at the February board meeting.
That is my expectation, correct.
Okay.
It's been a long process.
It
It's
has.
almost 2 years. We've waited this period of time to receive that. I mean, this is our 20-year plan or so as far as the plant goes, and it's a very, very important document. Let's get it right. Let's get it to us so we can evaluate it and have comments back and go from there and integrate a financial plan with that.
Yeah, so to the 2 points there, you had get it right, get it to us. Get it right. It's been a TTSA team effort. All of the managers have been involved in terms of making sure that what's in there is correct. And then getting it, and so that's been the necessary revisions back and forth, making sure that everything was correct in there. The get it to us part was almost there, and then they had the ransomware attack.
Well, yeah. I mean, for the last 6 months, it's almost there. I just want to get a date.
Any other questions for the engineering department report? Okay, seeing none, administrative department report. Crystal.
Good morning. So we just, in our department, one of the big things for the finance team is we implemented about the middle of November a weekly AP process versus a monthly one. And we have some deemed deficiencies on that. Still working towards getting it all electronic. And then we had our second finance committee meeting, and that's going. It's a very good learning experience, and it's going well, and getting more details out there to talk about and discuss, and especially planning for budgeting season coming up, and potential investments. In our billing customer service area, we had Celeste performed one commercial inspection, and we had 46 residential permit connection fee permits, 2 residential additional permits, and 1 residential additional exempt permit. And then we had 11 new EDUs at TSD that have been added to the sewer service charges. And then on the left, it's nice to see a picture, because I don't know the area very well, that the Donner Center was the commercial one, And then the Hopkins Village project is the majority of the sewer service. Saying that wrong, sorry. Is the majority of the 46 residential permitting for the Martis Valley project right there. At the top is the plans that they have, and in the bottom is a picture of ones that are already done. And then in overall, the biggest thing that I'm continuing to do is the learning on the investments and researching that. And then we did post for our purchasing agent 1-2 position. That recruitment is going on until January 6th, but as of today, we do not have any applications.
Okay.
Yes.
Got a question with regards to when somebody pulls a permit, what's the average time before the service charges start accruing?
Before they turn it into I don't know the average time, but I know that they have about 18 months, I believe, to actually.
Okay. That's a time before they would have to reapply if it wasn't connected.
Yes.
Okay. So.
And I can get that information. I just don't know it, and I don't know if whoever knows it. But
Yeah, we have an expiration date on it, but it's not hard to renew it.
Right. Yeah, because your service charge increases come about when they're actually operating coming in and operating the system, not permitting into it. And if we got five, on an average of 400 a year, then those service charges from a year to year and a half out won't be received, for that 18-month period or year period. So, when you're looking at the financials and looking at the service charge and not seeing any increases yet, we have 400 permits issued. It's strictly a time issue. Because I doubt there's very many of them that go beyond their 18 months.
yeah, I would have to research that to
Okay.
see.
No, just clarification. That was good.
Okay, anything else on the administrative report?
I got a question, Crystal. Have you had a chance to address or to figure out what kind of impact the runaway inflation or the increased inflation that we're experiencing has on our investment portfolios?
Well, we're in the beginning stages of looking at that right now. I have several meetings over the next few weeks with some of the investors that some of the investment companies we've been talking to. So we're in the starting phases of looking into that.
Because we haven't really addressed in quite a while where we're investing our money, whether it's LAIF or some of these other long-term securities, and I just wondered if we're able to keep up with inflation. Are we going backwards, or what are we dealing with here?
Yeah, I don't know for sure yet because we're still researching that.
It's a little new.
Within the finance committee, we have been discussing SEPT and CERT and investment possibilities there. So we do know that LAIF it's the safe investment, but it's not probably not the best investment. We are also waiting for the 2021 actuarial report to help us look at those numbers as well.
So do you have an estimated timeline on when we'll have that addressed? 2 months, 3 months?
It could potentially be a few months because the other big thing that we're kind of looking at too is.
I hate to put you on the spot.
No, you're fine. It's fine. We are dependent a little bit on the master sewer plan too to see what where our future expenses are going to be. So it's a whole bunch of moving parts.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that with the finance committee and getting the master sewer plan and looking into CERT and SEPT and different investment opportunities, we will be able to. I don't have a timeline. A few months, maybe.
Okay, we'll put that in Blake and Lane's.
Yeah.
Dale,
We're aware of it.
I don't want to get in too detail, but I'm not sure what is the end product you're expecting?
Well,
Where we
what
put
we're
our money?
looking at is we haven't addressed in quite some time our investment portfolio where we have our not so much surplus funds, but our not undedicated funds. We put them into LAIF or certain investment portfolios that give us a certain kind of return.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm interested in knowing is, with what we're addressing with inflation, at what time do you think it's going to be a good idea to start addressing our investment portfolios and the returns that those portfolios provide us?
I got you.
Because we have significant amount of money in these portfolios, and if they're not performing to keep up with inflation, we should readdress what we're looking at here.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Dan, I have one more question. Just on the recruitment where you say you haven't gotten a single application, how long have we floated that?
We posted it on December 6th, I believe. December 6th.
Okay.
If that's a Monday. So we were posting it for a month.
Is it in Craigslist?
It's not on Craigslist. It's on our website. It's on the GFOA government website. And then there's a governmental website that Vicki posts everything to that goes out to Indeed and 2 other places. Don't know off the top of my head what those places are, but Craigslist is definitely something that we can look into. And I'm not sure if maybe it's also because it's the holidays.
Right.
If that's a slower time for recruiting.
Tough job market, but I'm surprised, for a position like that with the stability you have in an organization like this, and the benefits that there wouldn't be people looking for that job and transitioning from other, local entities that are contractor related. That's.
If I may, what we found out is a few days before the end of the posting period is when they all come in.
Okay.
So it'll be very silent for like the first 3 weeks, and then the last week you just get inundated with a whole bunch of them.
Okay. Fingers crossed.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Okay. Any other questions on the administrative department report? Seeing none, general manager's report?
Yeah. In addition to what was written there, I just want to bring up a couple of highlights here. A lot of it you've already heard. I'll just touch on it real briefly. We did review and provide feedback on the master sewer plan. As Jay stated, there's also some other issues as it dealt to security, so we've already discussed that one when we anticipate that to be completed. We are moving forward with the SCADA and IT master plan. I've sat in a couple of those meetings. I think there's good progress there where they're evaluating our system, where we're at right now, where we want to be, so there's good progress there. And we also took steps to provide a week-long program, PLC training for our E&I and IT staff, which staff found to be very beneficial, and they're very happy with that. So now we'll have better and more efficient communication between the 2 departments, which is what we anticipated when IT moved down into the maintenance department. Again, hitting on a couple other things here. Cal OSHA, their recent visit here, they did continue to, they did ask us for more information. So Mike Smith and Jay Parker have done a great job submitting information to them. It's been over the course of maybe 2-3 weeks where they were just wanting information. So it turned out to be a lot more information than we anticipated, but we handled that superbly. We got everything on file. And then Richard touched on this, where we continue to research options to facilitate updated security gate access. So in addition to dealing with the gate and the code, we're also looking at potentially having locks with passes in certain portions of the plan as well, to make sure that only certain staff are restricted in certain areas. And that's one of the recommendations of IT Master, of the SCADA IT Master Plan, is that we limit access of employees to the IT and the server rooms, right? It's just another precautionary step there. The recruitment process, just to recap, we did close the mechanics and the operator position, and staff are reviewing those right now. And as Crystal alluded to, the recruitment phase is still going on for the purchasing agent, which closes the first week of January. We touched on the holiday events here. We did have our Thanksgiving lunch. Everybody enjoyed it. It was from Golden Rotisserie. We like I brought up that we did our food drives. For the Thanksgiving drive, we came up with 316 pounds of food, which equated to 263 meals, which I thought was a very good output from staff here. And our appreciation lunch for the December will be held tomorrow. It's going to be catered by Smokey's Kitchen. And we're also on our current Christmas food drive there. So these holiday events are being well taken by staff. Our Christmas holiday cards we mail out to staff are typically mailed out. This year I've opted to go ahead and hand them out personally for those that are here. And we have gifts provided to them for that. And those that aren't here, of course, due to shifts and vacations, we'll mail those out. With that, I have nothing else to add other than what I've discussed written in the report. If there's anything else, I can address questions.
Thanks. Any questions on the GM report?
None.
Okay, seeing none, I'll take public comment on any of the department or general manager reports. Please.
Thank you. Again, Griffin Mater, a couple of quick things. I don't want to harp on this too much, it's probably quick, but I want to talk a little bit about the violations, or the not, actually it wasn't a violation, right? It was not a violation that happened in the report in July, that happened in June. And allow that averaging, like Michael said, right, of the two different graph samples. Although I will point out that then in July, when there was a second issue, that was not allowed the second time. So that's just kind of, something to that I think is important to think about, that they did have a change. It appeared that Lahontan had a change as part of how that can move. The other thing I will say is that I hear what Dan is saying about the discharge and the tertiary treatment and how that whole thing fits together. I do have a little bit of concern about where the permit limit is, and maybe the permit should be revisited. Certainly that's possible. But just how that, from the public's perspective, we look at the permit as like those are the guardrails. We'd like to see it discharged within the guardrails. The other is just a little bit about the maintenance stuff. Maybe I misunderstand how this plant operates, but my understanding was that you could turn on recirculation, and during any maintenance that might result in a violation, you could just recirculate it back through the plant, and for a short period of time. It wasn't that big a deal because the plant has a capacity for some variation in total volume. And of course, you mentioned the emergency basins as an alternative when you're talking about how to deal with the high flows associated with New Year's or holidays. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up and ask about that. And then finally on the gate, this is sort of apropos of nothing, but at our HOA we have a similar issue with the gate and wanting to be able to have communication two-way. We actually installed a Google Nest camera. I mean, they're like $160 and they have voice and they, it was a sort of a cheap solution. I'm not saying that's sophisticated enough for what you guys want to do, but it was kind of an interesting solution we came up with. One doesn't have high enough resolution to read license plates at night, but certainly faces and vehicles and communications. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next on our agenda is Board of Director comments. Any comments?
Good.
Dale?
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Blake?
Yes, certainly. Merry Christmas. I also wanted to pass on, I'm not sure whether the other board members or any staff here interacted with a TSD board member, Ron Sweet. He was a board member since 1978. He passed away a couple weeks ago, and so a sad moment for us to see him leaving. So I thought, just in case anybody here knew, I'd pass that on. We'll be going through an appointment process over the next couple board meetings. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Just want to wish everybody a happy Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And thanks for doing a great job, Steph.
Thanks, everyone. So that concludes our open session meeting. We'll take a 5-minute break and then go to closed session for a public employee performance evaluation of the general manager position. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.